And a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wow. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm glad you're here. I don't want to waste any time because this is such a great subject. It's fascinating. I'm very interested in this. I thought at the beginning, let's just figure this out. How many people are caught up in the sex worker business?
Well, there's a lot of layers to this. There are a lot of sex workers worldwide. There are a lot of people who are engaged in the sex trade because it's such a large industry. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. You start with porn, go to camming, the magazines, escorting, street-based sex work, and then there's a lot of intersection with other social justice movements like incarceration, over-incarceration, criminal justice system, homelessness, hunger. There's HIV. LGBTQ. There's so many different movements that intersect with the sex industry that, it's a huge industry.
Any numbers, just how many here in, say, Florida?
We have a lot. We have a lot of sex workers in Florida. Florida is a very transient state. I can't tell you how many identify as sex workers. Some of them may identify as something else. It's really kind of impossible to put a name on it. Since they closed down Backpage, it's almost virtually impossible to even guesstimate how many people are advertising online. The work that used to be really easy to do through Backpage. Like, you could count that there were 500 ads posted on a Wednesday. There were 700 ads posted on Thursday. There were 1,200 ads posted in the Orlando area on Saturdays and Sundays. That kind of could give you an estimate of who was where.
And Backpage would be like a way for sex workers to advertise their business then?
Yeah, Backpage was started quite some time ago by a couple of guys that were longtime newsmen. They ran the back page of the Village Voice, and it was where a lot of people advertised their erotic services, massage, BDSM, all of that kind of thing. They took it to a website, and it became Backpage, and you could sell furniture, you could sell your sofa, but their largest revenue producing stream was for adult services. And the federal government closed them down in 2018 or 17. And ever since then, it's been really difficult. The advertising is spread out over multiple platforms. A lot of people were pushed into the street because there's a certain amount of safety that goes on when you're advertising online. You're able to vet your clients. You're able to know who's who. You could talk back and forth. You could see who else was working, that kind of thing. But once they closed that down, it became almost impossible to find sex workers, and it also became almost impossible to find sex trafficking victims.
So then where does someone go? Let's say you're a man, you want sexual relations with someone. Where do they go now? Do they just go online? Do they drive down their street in a certain section of town? How is it all done these days?
When someone asks me, I say the best thing to do is Google escorts near me. I don't know. I don't know of really any other way to track them down. As the Sex Worker Outreach Project, we do a street community-based outreach every Monday, and we have sex workers that come and go to pick up harm reduction supplies like condoms and lube and shampoo and conditioner and just all of the things that people would need. They come by to pick that up.
But how are people making contact with sex workers these days?
There's phone, internet. There's lots of different apps. There's lots of different. Twitter is a big market. Instagram. There's a lot of camming models on Instagram. That's primarily. It's still going to be an online platform, but there's. It's definitely been diluted.
Okay, so it's everywhere. It's like
everywhere.
you said, Facebook, Twitter. It's easy to find for someone if they want to connect with that. It's not hidden anymore.
Yeah, Facebook's a little bit more difficult just because of their weird, some things are okay, some things aren't thing. No nipples,
Right. And what is changing about the industry? Is it still the same? Is it still... I realize there's girls seeking girls, there's men seeking men. I get that, but is the basis of it the same?
The sex industry has always been here. It is the oldest profession. We've always had sex workers. There have been various times throughout history where they were revered and taken good care of. In biblical times, they were used to populate the earth because, they would have concubines so that they would have more children so that they could raise their crops and their families. There were a lot of sex workers who found it to be economically a good economic decision to move west. And as the West was getting settled, there were a lot of brothels because when you put a bunch of men out in a field and tell them that all they can do is fight, they get lonely, they get bored, they get frustrated, they lose their will to fight. And sometimes having that, our vices, whether it be drinking or sex or smoking or pot, all of those things, they change. They change people's perception of stuff. So, sex workers were largely responsible for settling the West.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a wise woman who came out and opened up a brothel that was attached to a liquor store because that's what brought in the coal miners. That's what brought in the gold rush. That's what happened to a lot of them. And they were freely able to do business there. The towns were often built around the brothels. The brothel would open up, then the little stores would open up that sold your flour and your goods, and you'd have lumber shops and all that kind of thing that came after that.
But it had to be looked down upon even back then because of the sort of Puritan society we began with, right?
In the Wild West, it was exactly that. It was the Wild West. Anything went. Later on, as time went on and as populations became more bigger, they did start to persecute madams. They did start to harass them. It wasn't all that unusual at all for them to kind of get chased out of town.
So when we see sex workers, let's go through the old-fashioned way of standing on a street corner. Let's start with that. And you're in a city in Florida, you're in Chicago, you're in LA, you're in Boston, and you see typically women standing around. Is this still a good industry for them? And are they working freely? Are they working on their own, or is a lot of them forcing them to do this?
Well, there's something that we call the spectrum of consent. And there's one end where someone enters it completely consensually because that's what they wanted to do, and they entered it freely. On the other end, there is the kid that's snatched out of their driveway and chained up in a basement. And then in the middle, there's this big, huge gray area where consent can become coercion and then become consent again. And I think that not recognizing that huge gray area, that someone may be doing it consensually on their own, for whatever reason, they may need it. They may need to do that because there's no other option, because they're hungry. They need to put their kids through school. They got to put food on the table. They might be paying for their college education. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why people go into sex work. Almost the same as many people, as many people as want to see a sex worker. There's just a lot of different reasons. So no, it's not safe really as far as standing on a corner, but a lot of sex workers work in pairs, so that they know where each other is going. They keep track of each other. The street-based sex workers that I've dealt with, they know who each other is. They take care of each other.
So it's a mix. So some are out there, and I would assume the escort business is the same way. They are either, is there still pimps in the way we know pimps, or is that?
There was a study done in Chicago by YWEP, and they were studying youth who are engaged in the sex trade. And they stated that less than 10% of juveniles who were engaged in the sex trade had any sort of management whatsoever. And 51% of them reported that their biggest fear was not abusive clients or pimps or management, but it was the cops.
And that's something that you are very passionate about. One of the things that you have been working feverishly through your life is to stop this harassment by the law, by the government, who has really made outcasts of sex workers, who have put the blame on the sex worker, locked the sex worker up, and have made them the real problem.
They would like for you to think that. They would very much like to think that, the anti-trafficking industry, we call it the rescue industry, has become proliferate over the last 10 years. You cannot swing a dead cat in Orlando without hitting an organization that is dedicated to raising awareness or eradicating modern day slavery. But what they don't take into account is that there are a lot of people who are engaged in the sex trade because they didn't have any other choice. And what they needed to be offered was not rescue, but opportunity. We need to outlaw poverty. We need to outlaw people not having enough to eat. We need to outlaw children, being running away from their homes because they're being abused or neglected, or because they're LGBT or whatever. Those are the things that we need to focus on. Just the act of a consensual transaction between consenting adults is not all that's at stake here. We're talking a lot of different intersecting issues that create an environment for exploitation. And when you have something that's criminalized, which sex work is criminalized in the United States, with the exception of a few places in Nevada, a few counties in Nevada, when you criminalize an entire class of people, you make their lives more dangerous, because, they're afraid. They don't want to get caught. They don't want to go to jail, because if you get arrested for a prostitution-related charge, your life is over. You can't rent an apartment. You can't get financing for a house. You probably won't be able to open a bank account, and you'll have a prison record as well, or an arrest record as well. And people look at that. I don't want to rent to that person.
So you would like to see the laws changed, not only in Florida, but it's a good place to begin, but around the United States, where essentially it's decriminalized.
Well, in 2016, Amnesty International released a policy on sex work where they recommended that sex work be decriminalized worldwide. Now, decriminalized and legalized are two very different things. Decriminalized means the consensual transaction of a one-to-one from one buyer to one seller would be decriminalized. What also would be decriminalized is the support system that sex workers have, which might be a driver. It might be someone who helped them with marketing. It might be a parent who lives with them. It might be someone who they pay for their food or something like that, a child. There's a lot of different things, and those are called third-party facilitators. And those people would no longer be criminalized as well. And we feel like that is the policy that should be. That's what sex workers have asked for. It would allow sex workers to report violence against them without fear of being arrested. Sex workers recognize when someone's being exploited, and they would be able to help that person find the services that they need if we were decriminalized. In the criminalized environment right now, if a sex worker is assaulted and she goes to the police, it's much more likely that she's going to be arrested or not be believed. Those are your two choices. So sex workers don't report violence.
So walk me through the steps. If you're a sex worker, you're arrested, what are the steps? What do the police do? And what do you have to pay in fines, or how does that work?
Well, it's different everywhere. But we just saw last week a raid on a strip club in Jacksonville, and they arrested, I believe, 14 sex workers. They shackled them, handcuffed them, and took them out on a bus. They shackled someone who was stripping. Okay. That seems kind of excessive. Okay. It's low-hanging fruit. They raided the club with masks down, with saying that they were looking for human trafficking victims. Okay. Well, all of these girls were at the strip club consensually, but they took them out. They humiliated it. They posted their names and faces on the media, on Facebook. The cops brag about it. The sheriff brags about it.
And they were working there illegally.
And they were working there legally.
A legal strip club.
A legal strip club, and they arrested them on prostitution charges. Now the good thing is the strip club owners went and got a lawyer, and now they're suing them in a federal lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of putting women who are doing erotic labor in leg irons. That seems extreme.
So when someone is arrested, let's just say a prostitute is arrested, what happens? Walk me through the step.
She would go to jail. Okay. They're gonna arrest her. They're going to take her to someplace where they're going to question her, and they're going to take her phone away. They're going to steal her money. She's not going to get that back.
Wait, what do you mean they steal her money?
They take any money that she has on her at that time.
No matter what it is.
Proceeds of prostitution.
So
it's illegal funds. So they steal it. Right? Legal theft, totally illegal theft. They'll steal any of the property that she might have. And it is theft. I want to make it really clear. It is theft. When you take something that's not yours, whether you're a cop, working a beat or not, taking someone's money is not helpful. Then they go to jail. They may sit there for their first arraignment. They go before the judge. The judge may decide to hold them on a bond anywhere from $500 to $1,500. They'll be at some point in time they'll go before a judge.
How long would they sit in jail then if they didn't have the money for the bond?
If they didn't have the money in the bond, they're going to sit there till their next court appearance, or until a public defender is able to get them released, or until they come up with a bond.
So that could be for how long? I mean, roughly.
I've known girls to sit in jail for 6 months before they're released on a simple prostitution charge.
Oh, my God.
And so when you go to jail and you aren't able to pay your rent, you're going to lose your home. You're not able to pay your car. You're going to lose your car. You lose everything. In Orange County, it wasn't too long ago, but they were releasing people at midnight. And so they would release a lot of these ladies at midnight with dead phones. They didn't have any shoes. They probably were arrested without shoes on. They would let them go, and they would walk out of the county jail at midnight, 1:00 in the morning. And before they got to the IHOP, they would be picked up by a pimp, taken across the street to a hotel, and now they're being coerced and forced into doing things that they didn't want to do. They give them a hamburger, they feed them. These are all things that, all things that people need.
So then they go in front of the judge. The judge looks at the case, whatever, and then can fine them then?
Yeah, they can fine them. They can sentence them to a diversion program, which means that if they complete certain steps and don't get arrested again, they'll be able to have the prostitution arrest expunged. It's a misdemeanor. However, if they're arrested for a third time, it's considered habitual, and they receive 1 year and a day in prison.
1 year
in prison.
So getting caught as a prostitute, as a sex worker, it's a nightmare. I mean,
it's a nightmare. It's your worst nightmare. Because then you become known to the cops who are on the street that you're a known sex worker, and that leaves them free to exploit and harass you as well. There was a young lady in Columbus, Ohio, that was she had been arrested for a prostitution charge. She had been released, ROR. She was walking home. She had called her mother, said she was going to be there. A police officer by the name of Andrew Mitchell pulled up, told her to get in the car. She got in the front seat of the car. He pulled in next to an apartment building so that she couldn't open the door or get out, and proceeded to, some things took place, and he ended up shooting her 8 times in the front seat of his car.
What?
Killing her. Her name is Donna Dalton. And killing her. And he went for months without being indicted. Months and months and months, because the police officers are the enemy. I mean, most times there's any police officer will tell you, ask them, what's the best kind of snitch you can get? A white hooker.
I've never asked a cop that.
Yeah, you should try it sometime. Yeah, it's the best. It's the best snitch you can get.
So if it was decriminalized, walk me through. Then what would change then?
If it was decriminalized, they wouldn't be able to. It's been decriminalized in New Zealand for 16 years now. There would be no criminal or civil penalties to someone who was engaged in trading sex a one-to-one transaction. It would still outlaw pimping. It would still outlaw coercive and trafficking and that kind of thing activities, but it would remove the criminal and civil penalties. So there would be no more fines. There would be no more being held in jail until you lose lose all your stuff. And eventually, as time went on, the stigma would become decreased. There would be less likely for harassment by police officers. The criminal justice system would receive a great deal of relief, because these cases just stack up on public defenders' desks, and they just plead guilty and get it over with.
Yeah, I mean, everyone in these cases must be rolling their eyes from the judge to the...
97% of all cases in the United States, all cases, not just prostitution cases, are pled out, which means that they don't get a trial. They agree to plead guilty to a lesser charge just in order to get it over with. Because if you don't, you could be sitting in prison or in jail waiting for your court case for years on years on years.
Don't you think it's a case, too, that here in society that we're afraid to change these laws because, number one, we've been doing it this way, okay, for all these years. Number two, there'd be people that would say, well, if you don't, then everyone's going to be a sex worker, right? Yeah. Then three, religion plays a role in here somewhere. So don't you think those things prevent us from changing?
No, what prevents us is the fact that legislators just absolutely refuse to engage with sex workers. They refuse to talk to us and rely on our expertise because many of us have experienced exploitation. I've been a sex worker since 1984. There was a time in my late 20s, early 30s that I was in a really horrible relationship and I was exploited on a daily basis. And it was awful. And it took me a long time to get out of that relationship because there was always the threat that they were going to tell my family or they were going to tell my friends or they were going to tell my vanilla job. There was always that threat, and so I stayed in that abusive relationship to protect myself, sure. And it wasn't until I was able to get out that I was able to say, okay, now I can do it of my own volition again.
So what age were you and what exactly were you doing and how did you start that as a sex worker? Where did that begin?
Well, I was 21 when I entered a strip club. And I wanted to get a job. I needed money to pay my rent. I was working as a hairdresser in a chain salon. I wasn't earning enough money to meet my financial obligations. I wasn't broke, but I needed more money. I wanted to shop too.
Wait. Before we go any further, what was your stage name? Do you remember?
Oh, God, there's been so many.
What was your favorite? What was your Alex Stage 3? Yeah. I doubt it was that, right?
I believe Taylor Elizabeth was one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had to know that.
I've always kind of gone by non-gender names. I'm not sure why, but somebody has pointed that out to me that, Jackie, Alex, a lot of these names.
I like the ones that pick like somebody famous, say somebody's like,
Yeah.
Taylor Swift to Stage 4.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
Wait, this is going to be good.
Stay for this. Yeah. I think somebody said the way you pick your stripper name is you use your mother's maiden name and your first pet. And your first pet is your first name, and your mother's maiden name is your last.
Well, see, for porn stars, for guys, I always thought it was your middle name and your street that you grew up on.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's another good way to do it. Yeah.
My middle name's Michael. I grew up on Eastwood, so mine would have been Michael Eastwood.
Yeah, mine was Fuzzy Valdois.
That's good. I think that would have worked.
I don't know.
I like it.
Not in this age of waxing, I don't think.
Right. Okay. So you're in a strip club. You're just working as a stripper.
I was actually working as a cocktail waitress.
Oh, okay.
I started out as a cocktail waitress. I made almost $1,100 my first night, and I said, "Oh yeah, this is definitely
just as a cocktail
waitress."
Okay.
Yeah. It's just selling drinks and that sort of thing. Eventually, they said you should enter this amateur contest because the strip clubs have, they're all kind of associated, and they'll kind of rotate their performers. So they would have these nights on a Tuesday when it's usually really dead. They would have these amateur contests, and they would invite all of the cocktail waitresses at all the different clubs to participate in this amateur contest. So I did that a couple of times, and you made really good money when you did the amateur
Alex
contest.
is like, I can do this.
Whatever.
These girls don't know what they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, and that was really what it was. The amateur contest was, it was a money maker for the club. People came in, they bought drinks, they hung out, they bought food, they tipped, and it was good for everyone. So I won a couple of amateur contests, and then I thought, this is totally what I'm going to do. And I was working at a club in San Antonio. I was dating the DJ, and the DJ called downstairs and asked me to bring up a drink for him. So I went up and I took this really super narrow staircase to get up into the DJ booth. And on my way back down, I tripped on my 6-inch platforms and slid all the way down the stair and broke my kneecap.
Oh.
It was carried out on a stretcher. And of course,
Workman's
I was
comp.
not a big saver. Yeah. There's no workman's comp. There's no OSHA.
No, they're not worried about you too much.
No, they really aren't.
Yeah.
There's no health insurance.
Yeah.
There's no benefits. There's none of that. So I didn't know what I was going to do. And a friend of mine said, well, why don't you try escorting?
Wait, by the way, were you what they call like an independent contractor and you actually pay the strip club
everybody
to dance
was, yeah.
there? So like, how does that work? You have to pay them like 50 bucks a night or something?
You basically tip out everybody. You have to tip out the bartender. You have to tip out the DJ. You tip out the security. They would sell a drink for $5, and you would get a quarter for each of the drinks that you sold. If you sold a bottle of Moet, for example, you get $50 commission on that. I'm a very good salesperson, so it was very easy for me to just stock up
the champagne room or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So we would do it that way, and then at the end of the night, you would have to tip out the bartender. You would have to tip out the DJ. You would have to tip out the doorman and the manager and all that kind of thing. And that ensured the next time you came to work, you got the primary and the good areas.
So there's
when
no minimum.
When a customer would come up and he was one of the make it rain kind of guys, you would get his table because you were known for tipping well. So I learned that lesson really early on. Tip the girls because then they'll say, no, I'm only going to order from Alex. Our table is going to be Alex's only. That would be how we would work it.
How bizarre.
Yeah.
So
and nowadays, the strippers are being charged so much. Very often, they'll leave work earning with less money than they came in with.
But then wouldn't that stop them from going to work there? Then wouldn't they just eventually go?
I mean, it just happens. I mean, it happens that way. Some days it rains. Sometimes it's sunny.
That's got to be hard dancing all night.
And there's no organizing within the strip clubs. The management doesn't want you to organize within the strip clubs. There is the erotic providers union that has a union for people who are involved in the sex trade. But it's really hard to get people to pay dues. I'm a member of the erotic service providers union. But it's there's not really any other benefits other than I get to rock it with some really great people.
So then you went on to escorting from there.
Yes, because there was nothing I could do.
So then you were one of those people taking out ads or whatever you had to do.
I was actually from the Yellow Pages days when they listed escort services.
I remember those days.
Yeah, when they listed escort services in the Yellow Pages, and they would call up and you would describe a girl to them, and then you would go on over and you would meet the obligation. You take the call. It was usually a set price with a tip associated with it. You would go in, you would leave, and then you would go on to your next call, go home, wait for another one, whatever.
Was that your own little business though? I mean, no, you weren't working for anyone.
Yeah, I mean, you work for the escort service that actually has the ad up,
right?
And you give them Sometimes some escort services did a sliding scale. They wanted half of whatever it is you'd earned. I would only work for one that did a flat fee.
Okay.
I was pretty picky and choosy even then. And if they wanted to do, half of whatever I earned, that they were just dreaming. They could find someone else to do that. But
were you nervous all the time of, oh my God, I'm going to get busted this time? I mean, did you look around a room and go, are there cameras? And I know it's back in the day there weren't.
No. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why I fight so hard for sex worker rights is, I'm one of the original burning bra feminists. I'm very committed to bodily autonomy. I'm very committed to every woman has the right to health care, including abortion. And I don't like some guy in Washington or Tallahassee telling me what I can do with my body. I think that is intrusive. I don't think that they have any business there. I think that what I do is my business and not anybody else's. So that's how I felt from an early age. That's how I felt when I was at the strip clubs, I didn't do anything I didn't want to do. I didn't go anywhere I didn't want to go. If I saw a client and it smelled fishy for whatever reason, I walked out. That's the way that we operated.
So then how many years did you end up doing the escort thing then?
Well, what is yesterday?
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Still a good living.
I'm a sex worker.
Did not know that.
I'm a sex worker.
Okay.
And even during the time, well, listen, when you're a sex worker, it's always an option.
Right.
It's not like, you don't have to work all the time.
You just work when you want to work.
You work when you want to work. You work when you want to work, and you activist when you want to activist.
I'm sort of fascinated with the psychology of all this. I feel like then what you do, have you seen it all? Like, is there anything that you couldn't surprise me with?
I've never experienced violence,
okay.
Which a lot of sex workers have experienced violence. now that we're in the internet age and we're away from the yellow pages, and there's a lot more creepy guys out there who think it's okay to assault sex workers, and I've never had that experience. My experience in this sex industry is very unique. I've never experienced any violence. I've never experienced any kind of trouble like that. I have been arrested, and I have experienced the criminalization, and that is a horrific kind of violence,
right?
In my eyes, I mean, that is just the worst kind of violence that you can do,
right?
And it goes on for a lifetime. I was arrested in 1991, and I completed my probation, paid all my fines, and in April of this year, I was denied and living in a homeowners association. I was denied by the homeowners association. So from a 91 arrest. So it carries on through. They
found out you had been arrested.
They did a background check for
the homeowners association didn't like you.
The mortgage company. Yeah, we were buying the house. Right? Yeah, we were buying the house, and the mortgage company, the mortgage officer called me up the day before, and he said, "Okay, so we've got this problem." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, they don't want to let anyone with a prostitution conviction in." I said, "I had that expunged." And he said, "Well, they still saw it." And that's part of the problem with the vacatur and the expungement of criminal records. They don't take away the arrest.
Okay, but before we get out of this subject, you had to have, and even up to this date, you got to run into some bizarre people, though, right? Like, everyone is not just the loving and sweet kind of, just mainly guys. Is this what we're dealing with?
You have men and couples. Okay. A lot of times.
So is everyone just real polite to you and nice and easygoing? And
I kind of am. I command respect. So yeah, I've never really had any problems. There have been some, some off the wall requests, but not.
Can you give me one?
I'm not into BDSM. Okay. So I don't take calls, or I don't take clients that are looking for a BDSM experience. And I did try that when I was in my younger years, and I just
it's not your thing.
They take it really seriously, and I'm more of a I'd rather laugh.
Right.
So yeah, it's just not, that just wasn't my thing. So I don't take those calls.
So, but not like bizarre people, like frightening looking. I know if I was in this industry, I'd get all the scary looking people. Like, I'd walk into the room and go, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, there's a lot of violence in the sex industry. There is a lot of violence in the sex industry. There's a lot of clients that go completely unchecked. And they prey on sex workers. I believe you probably are aware they just caught a man who was they called him the I-4 killer, I think he was, and he targeted prostitutes in Daytona Beach. And they just caught him. They don't look that hard.
I feel like you're avoiding. There's never guys that you walk into the room and go, "Oh my God, this guy's disgusting." Like, really?
It's my job. I mean,
really?
It's my job. They're people. It's people require intimacy. Are there some calls that I wouldn't go back to? Absolutely, yeah. But I mean, this is the job.
See, that would freak me out. I would be like,
I would rather not be in rooms with politicians than most of my clients.
Now, why is that? Why is that?
Because politicians and cops are just like the world. They're the worst people, I think, on the planet.
Really?
Legislators are completely out of touch with what's going on in the communities that they're supposed to be representing. It's all a nepotistic kind of system where you have people that are related, that are going into different areas of government, and you've got lobbyists, and you've got all this, and they don't want to listen to the people who are most affected by the laws that they're putting forth in their community. A good example was last session, they came up with a bill. Lauren Book presented a bill to the Senate that was asking to create a prostitution registry so that everyone who was arrested for prostitution would be listed on this registry. Now, we knew that sex workers were going to be on this registry, and they came at us. They said, "Oh, no, it's just for the clients, just for the clients, just for the clients." Why would I want my clients arrested? My clients are the ones that pay my bills. We don't want clients arrested. That's Nordic model kind of stuff, and it doesn't work. Their idea is that if you reduce the demand, then the supply will dry up. Well, you can't tell someone who's living day to day, living on the street, that you're going to arrest all their clients, and then when they wonder why it is that they can't feed their family anymore, they don't say, well, demand dried up. I'm going to go ahead and take that corporate job with the company car and the health benefits. It doesn't work that way. They don't have those kind of opportunities.
So did all your challenges in the sex trade, even up to this date, is that years ago, that's how you became co-founder of Swap Behind Bars? Tell people what the acronym stands for and what you guys are trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. The Sex Worker Outreach Project Behind Bars is an organization that primarily works to serve the needs of people who have been arrested and are doing prison time and have also engaged in the sex trade. There have been a lot of numbers thrown out, and we haven't been able to really verify any of them, but somewhere between 60 and 70% of women who are in prison have also been involved in trading sex, whether it be for drugs or food or lodging or whatever. It's a pretty high number, and that number scares me a little bit because I feel like we already know that we're locking up a lot of poor people and a lot of people of color and a lot of trans people, people without opportunities and without access. We already know that we're doing that. And I think that just puts a big exclamation point on the bottom of the fact that we need criminal justice reform worse than we've ever needed it before. There has also never been a study done that talks about how many women are doing prison time for assaulting or killing their abuser. And that's because when someone goes behind bars, we don't care about them anymore. They're out of sight, out of mind. And if someone is fighting for their life, and they kill their abuser, or they kill the person who's harming them, we don't take that into account.
Is that really a big problem? Do you think? Do you think it's bigger than we even realize?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm not saying it's not any better when a man is assaulted or when a woman is assaulted by or killed by an abuser, or a man is assaulted and killed by an abusive spouse. It's not right either way. I think we really need to take a hard look at what we're doing and who we're charging and what our criminal justice is standing for. We're not putting away white-collar criminals who steal millions and millions of dollars from people. We don't put them away for 10 or 15 years. But if it's a person of color who's selling drugs, we'll lock them up forever. But it's perfectly fine for people to go ahead and just completely wreck our economic system, and nobody goes to jail.
You know what's bizarre? We're talking about our laws not only in Florida but around the rest of the world. I'm amazed how many countries are more liberal about this subject. I'm amazed when I look at places like Finland, Switzerland, Germany.
Oh, Switzerland is not someplace you want to pattern after. There was just a demonstration done there
but
yesterday.
Here's my point. Venezuela, there's a lot of countries that, and I know it's different from each country, but have looked at this issue and gone, it's not that big of a deal, and their society hasn't collapsed because of it.
Yeah. The Swedish model, which is also known as the Nordic model, the Swedish model is one where the client is the one who gets arrested and not the sex worker. But what that actually does is that pushes sex workers further into the corner, further into the shadows, and less able to have bodily autonomy and control over the clients that they take. Because the clients don't want to submit to a vetting process. They don't want people to know their real names. And by being able to skirt that process, you can encounter a lot more violence. There was just a demonstration done on Monday, I want to say it was, with all of the sex workers in Sweden. They had a Congress, and they told legislators that this model that has been in place for several years is killing them. It's literally killing them. And they are still stigmatized. They're still discriminated against. All of that has stayed. New Zealand is the only country who has decriminalized sex work, and they still have it criminalized for migrant sex workers. But after 16 years, the co-founder of Swap Behind Bars, Dr. Jill McCracken, did some interviews over there for several months last fall. And when she talked to sex workers, she said, So what about the police? Are you afraid of the police? And they just looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Why would we fear the police? Because now if a client says, I'm not going to pay you, the sex worker goes to the cop and the cop goes and collects the money and straightens things out. The sex workers and the police are aligned for the safety of the sex worker.
So would you say then New Zealand has more of the laws that you would like to see, or
They
is it
do,
somewhere
and
else?
if someone wants to exit sex work, which is really what we're talking about, when someone wants to leave, they can walk into an office that is funded by the government, and they can receive the services that they need in order to exit safely without stumbling around or being locked in a cell. The government sponsors the New Zealand Prostitutes Collective. They help these women receive different kinds of training of things that they want to do. They support them when they are involved in a domestic violence situation. There's no longer that stigma and discrimination against sex workers that there was before.
But you don't think our laws will ever get to this point? Like
It's going to be a while. Now, D.C. is really looking over some very serious efforts to decriminalize sex work in Washington, D.C. That's one of the area, interestingly enough, it's one of the areas where the sex trade is prolific. Sex trafficking is a problem. Sex trafficking, particularly within the sex industry, is problematic. The anti-trafficking folks don't consider a sex worker who is all of a sudden become forced or coerced, they don't consider them a good enough victim to get services. So the services at the anti-trafficking organizations are very inappropriate, they're very inadequate, and they don't really serve the purpose. I have a friend right now who's being held at one of the lockdown centers here in Central Florida. She's a trans woman who was experiencing some exploitation. She's 35 years old, always done sex work. She got involved with some bad people. The district attorney was wise enough to recognize that she was in a vulnerable position, and he dropped the charges. And she's been staying at this lockdown human trafficking shelter for quite some time. She can't make phone calls without somebody listening in. She can't go anywhere without getting permission. She's not able to look for a job or proceed forward with her life. It would took them months to get them in to see a doctor so that she could get the hormones that she needed in order to continue to do her life. I was able to get those for her within a day. I try really hard to work with the anti-trafficking organizations because I do recognize that people are often being exploited or they find themselves in bad situations, but they don't need judgment. They need help, not handcuffs.
Yeah, and imagine it's some very wonderful work that you do, like using that as an example, the trans person, because they are going through this difficult time. It's tough to get a job. Nobody's going to hire you. Or if they do, they're going to discriminate against you. And you almost feel like such an outcast that I hate to say it, but this may be the only way to make a living and survive, especially if you don't have family and family's ousting you. Family is looking at you like you're a black sheep. So thank God there's organizations like yours.
Yeah, I mean, some of the best work we've done is with the folks who need help the most. People who are being released from prison get $50 and a bus ticket to wherever they want to go, maybe 15 to 30 days worth of medication. They don't have anything. That $50 gift card goes really fast. We try to send them a supply of hygiene items, a $125 gift card to Walmart. We try to make sure that they are connected to food banks in their areas so that maybe that money can go a little bit further. We try to set them up with a Goodwill if they have a job center. We help them write a resume. We help them try to continue to find a job. We've been doing a program where we send a smartphone to someone who's just been released so that they can get on the internet, using a Wi-Fi connection, and they can start to re-enter their community that way. So that they can have access to a lot of imagine if you didn't have the internet. How would you find a job these days? That's how you apply for jobs. Yeah.
No, you couldn't. You almost can't survive. In fact, when my internet goes down, I feel like my life is crumbling.
Yeah, I feel you there. Yeah, no,
it's not connecting fast enough. I lose my mind.
Yes,
my son loses his mind.
Yeah, I have the fastest internet speed you can get at my house, and when it goes down, I'm just a mess.
My 7-year-old, when he cannot connect to YouTube, he You would think. You have no idea. He loses his mind, like the world is coming to an end because he can't find a video.
Yeah, well, just imagine if your porn stops right in the middle of it.
That would be out. That we have to change. Legislation on that immediately.
Porn has been the leader in a lot of the technology that we have now. A lot of the streaming services were first done with porn. With porn companies. A lot of the technology that the internet has developed has come from pornography. And it's a really exciting industry. I go to the AVN Awards every year, and the expo, and to see the things that are being displayed, and to see all the people running around and sex workers loving on each other, and it's just an amazing experience. There's 50,000 people
So explain to me. I don't get it. Okay, good. You're a perfect person to ask this. How do these porn sites make money now? If the porn is free.
Well, it's not supposed to be free. You should pay for your porn. Randy.
All right.
If you're not paying for your porn.
I'm doing something illegal.
And we can start doing, you're doing something unethical.
Okay.
It's just like the music, like Napster, for example.
So everyone's ripping it off? Everyone's stealing it?
Pay for your porn.
Okay. So, but isn't there free porn? Isn't there just, you can go to a site?
They do clips. Yeah, they'll do little clips in order to get you to purchase the rest of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
They want you on a membership.
But they have to get it down to, 15 seconds in some cases.
Keep it quick?
Yeah.
They don't want you too involved?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. I was telling Kathleen, who's in studio here today, I was telling her back in the 80s, a buddy and I went to a porn theater in Arizona. That's where I went to school. And I was telling her that was the only way you could see a porn. She was like just shaking her head going, what the?
Can you imagine going into a theater?
On. You'd walk into a theater. Me and my buddy. Thank God we had a couple beers and we were young. But you walk in, it's
extra liquid courage.
You need it a lot, believe.
And
you walk in, it's a regular theater.
You gotta sit on those seats.
I know. I mean, every cliche that you could possibly think of and it's mostly men. Mm-hmm. There might be like a woman over there
raincoats.
Raincoat. I don't remember that. See, now you've been watching too many 80s or 90s movies. But you'd walk in. But it was the only way you could really. There wasn't like VHS tapes at that time. Yeah. I'm sure there was, but it was not, Amazon back then to get your stuff or whatever. And you'd walk in there and people would sit there and watch a full-length porn just sitting there. It was bizarre.
Yeah.
A bizarre world. So I'm thankful that now that people actually can get their porn on the front. I think that's actually safer, healthier, and good. Keep your business at home.
I think that, having porn readily available, one of the things that really frustrates me is that parents are letting their kids learn about sex from porn. And that's not where you should be learning about sex from. You should be learning about sex from your well-informed, well-educated parents who want you to have the power of knowing and understanding your sexuality as you become older.
There's no way I'm explaining sex to my.
Well, then you need to send your child to an OWL program. It's the Our
Is there a
Whole
camp?
Lives.
Is there like a camp?
There is
camp?
Actually by the Unitarian Church.
Good,
there is
an
age appropriate
Love it.
Program called the OWL program, Our Whole Lives. It's for anyone from age 5 up to age 30. It's all age appropriate. It teaches about their body. It teaches them what's happening as their body grows and they get older, and they realize that they're normal. And it gives kids this enormous sense of power and control to know that they can say no when something doesn't feel right. Education and information are the best tools we can use to fight trafficking and to fight abuse and exploitation. Those are the things that we can use, and we've got to make sure that people are informed and they understand the ramifications of running down to OBT, snatching somebody in a van, and then holding them up at this lockdown center for a while. It's not a good environment for recovery.
So you really do think things are going to change in places like Florida and the United States? You really think someday we're going to decriminalize some of the activities we're talking about?
I think we will. Yes, I do think we will. I think it's going to be eventually. I think eventually is like probably not in my lifetime. I think that we have to come to a place where we all recognize that we're all going to have sex at some point. that it's going to happen.
You think
it's
so?
It's going to happen.
Right. It's it's a normal human function.
I mean, it's out there.
What are we lying
Yeah,
about?
there's nothing wrong with enjoying sex. There's nothing wrong with having sex.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with having sex before marriage. There's nothing wrong with that. These are choices that people make, but we need to make sure that they're doing it in an informed capacity. Studies of sexual predators have shown that they learned a lot of their information. They were obsessed with pornography when they were younger. They had cruel parents who, may have abused them in different ways. They might have been assaulted themselves as children. We have to recognize that we're creating our own cesspool, and that's what our kids are coming up in. And then we're too scared to say, this is how sex happens.
So do you think
it's okay to do it for fun?
Do you think porn is dangerous then for?
Not at all.
Good?
Not at all. Not at all. Porn is not dangerous. Porn is not a public health hazard. Porn performers are some of the most legit people in the world. They are some of the greatest activists that I know. There's the Adult Performers guild that they're a performers union, and they are trying to organize porn performers, so that they can better negotiate their contracts, so that they can determine the kind of working conditions that they have, all of those kinds of things. We're very pro union and pro organizing, and pro making sure that people's individual lives are made better. By the things that they choose to do. Porn and the sex industry is something that not everybody should be doing. Anybody can do it, but not everybody should.
Yeah.
And that's really the truth. But we've got an economic model right now for our people who are in the most amount of distress, where they don't have any options. They're not going to an Ivy League school. They're probably not going to be able to even pay for Seminole, community college,
sure.
I mean, they're not going to be able to have those opportunities. A lot of them have dropped out of school to sell drugs to support their families. These are the people we're fighting for. These are the people that we should be fighting for. And legislators in Tallahassee, they just don't recognize that things like, the prostitution registry is something that's going to ruin families. And when you break apart families, you break apart societies, you basically ruin the world. A man who is arrested for purchasing prostitution could lose his family. Little girls who grow up without their daddies are much more likely to be exploited and assaulted because they don't have that parental figure. We're creating our own problems.
I read somewhere years back that the state of Florida has become the second largest producer of porn in this country. Mm-hmm. Florida. Not just behind California.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that's true or not. It wouldn't surprise me because there's so much camming that goes on right now. We have a lot of.
What is camming?
Camming is they have cam sites like
cameras?
Pornhub and they're doing it in the privacy of their own
cameras
home.
Yeah,
live cameras.
Okay.
And it's becoming more and more popular. We are Miami and we've got this inclement weather that it's really nice to have.
Easy to get shots out on the beach.
Yeah,
I don't know. But is there something in the laws that makes it looser or easier to do here?
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? It's illegal to exchange money for sex unless you're filming it.
So you and I could shoot a porn together and then make money off of it.
As long as you paid for it, paid me for it, and that's number one. I think you should get at this point. Mama got to get paid.
Of course. Okay. I'm going to pay you.
We could sell it, and there's nothing illegal about it.
And there's nothing, and nobody could do a thing.
Nothing illegal about it.
Oh, that is bizarre.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I can go do it for free. I can go pick up some guy in a bar or a group of guys in a bar, go home and do the wild thing for free. Nobody says anything other than the fact that maybe I'm a slut.
Right. It is a weird thing that has always been that, if you call it a date and I take you out to dinner, then
yeah, that's okay.
Everything's good. Yeah. But if we just say, let's cut the dinner out.
Yeah, I'll give you $100 and
I'll give you $10 and I'm cheap.
Okay. Wow.
No. Yeah, I know.
Noted.
Yeah. Don't. When you get my phone call next week, no, not to come over.
Yeah,
I understand. But it's bizarre that we do that, and think how many people go on dates and sleep together the first night, without even a thought. How many people pick somebody up at a
And
bar?
without a condom.
How many people meet at a music festival, whatever it might be, and there is no law against that. But as soon as you
put a dollar amount
figure.
on it, yeah.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
It becomes illegal, and you must go to jail. Or be rescued, one or the other.
Yeah. I don't know. I think you and I were talking just a little bit before we started this program, and I think things are changing. I think we're slowly peeling the layers back of our society. And I mean that in a good way. I think we're realizing, like what we have said, people are having sex, they're doing it, and people need to make a living. They're going to do this sex trade, whether you fight it to the end or not, and you arrest everyone on your street. And I think when we see now presidents are having sex, presidents are paying prostitutes to have,
presidents
porn
have
star.
always had sex.
I know. But
probably with porn stars.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I gotta think that the Roosevelts weren't doing this.
But we don't know, do we?
Maybe they were cross-dressed.
Maybe that wheelchair's a kink.
No. But regardless, we're starting to see that.
Yeah.
You know what? These people are doing this, and we know of people doing it in our circles. So what is it we're doing? What is it we're against that these people are trying to make a living?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think
I agree with you. I agree with the way that you're seeing that. I only hope that legislators and the public can support legislation that will allow people to live their lives, do the things that they have to do, and then be free to reach out for help and have community resources that are able to meet that need.
And I know you hear this your whole life, but I have to ask you, people are going to watch this and they're going to comment and they're going to say, what the hell about disease? Hey, lady, you're just encouraging it. You're just, you're the one causing it. What are your thoughts?
I'm a harm reductionist. So, and I used to sit on the board of the international harm reductionist, which means that people are going to do what they're going to do. We need to make sure that we provide the things that they need in order to do it safer. That's what syringe exchange programs are all about. That's what safe injection sites are all about. That's what passing out condoms is all about. On Monday, every Monday, we probably give out around 2,000, 2,500 condoms out on the street because it's important for people to have the tools they need to stay safe. When I was sitting on the board of NSWP, which is a global sex worker rights organization, they said that we've achieved 80% condom use worldwide. Within the sex industry, which means that sex workers are demanding, and it's essential. You have to use a condom. And guys offer to pay bareback, pay extra to go bareback. They offer all of these things, but sex workers know my health is the most important thing that I have.
Right.
So we're very serious about making sure that people have the things that they need in order to stay safe.
But people are going to look at this and say, you're just, it's like speeding down a road. If you don't put up speed limits, people are going to go, 175 miles. In Germany, along the Autobahns.
Well, on the Autobahn, yeah. But that's the whole point of the Autobahn. It's not the point of Orange Avenue.
No, but I'm trying to make the point that if you don't arrest these people, you don't stop this, it's going to be rampant. People are going to, then everyone's going to do it.
Well, you know what? If maybe everyone tried it and they didn't like it and there were services that were available to help them get an education to do something else, then great. But right now, sex work pays better than McDonald's.
Well, you said something so interesting. It's been resonating in my head since you said this, is what we really have to change is providing opportunities out there for people so that this is not my only choice. Mm-hmm. I'm not living in the hood looking around going, maybe I don't have the best education. Maybe I don't have access to it, or, maybe I'm just a crappy student. So, I think
maybe I have a learning disability.
Right.
Maybe my parents didn't have enough money to get me to school and to buy the books that I needed. Maybe I wasn't able to get my school uniform, the the way that I was supposed to get, and now they won't let me back into class. There's a lot of reasons why people don't finish school, and it's not just because they were crappy students. And I want to give a shout out to United Against Poverty Orlando, right down here at 150 Michigan. They are actively working to provide resources for poor people. It's not just a food bank. They have GED classes. They have a linkage to trade schools, so people can go to beauty school or welding school or whatever they want to do. One of the girls that I first worked with, I don't know, 2011, I think it was. I hadn't heard from her for a while, and I was looking around. I was shopping for some furniture, some very specific furniture. I walked into a furniture store, and there she was. She owned the resale shop. I was so happy. She had just gotten out of prison for doing a year for receiving proceeds from prostitution. She thought she was going to be forever stuck in that place. And within a short period of time, within 5 years, she owned her own resale business. I have clients who have been sex workers who are now they're now hairdressers, and they rent a booth. It's incredible when you give somebody an opportunity instead of judgment, and you tell them you do what you got to do to make all of this work towards your benefit, and I'm going to make sure that you have those resources. They can do anything they want.
But don't you think there's people also working in the sex trade, especially like in the strip clubs and escorts, that there's I don't know, a laziness. I don't know if that's the right word, but laziness where this is just so easy. I mean, I don't want to do anything legitimate.
It is easy. It is easy. Why? And that's a completely consensual sex worker. So let's be happy for them. They found a job that meets their needs and that they're happy doing. Listen, there's no rush like coming out of a hotel room with $300 after 15 minutes.
Really?
There just isn't. There's no rush for a performer when they're up on stage twirling around that pole, like all the attention that they're getting from that for that costume or for that performance or whatever. They're performers.
The pole seems like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
That just seems exhausting.
Yeah, that's some injurious stuff right there.
I feel like that has got to be.
We really need to applaud those ladies that get up there and do all that. We really do, and it takes a lot of practice.
How many Motley Crue songs they've had to dance to in their life?
Yeah, well,
you do what you got to do.
And listen to who you got to listen to.
I'm still bothered though that you don't go to a job and you just don't look and go, God, I can't. I'm amazed in your confidence and that you take it as this is part of the job, because I would be horrible in your industry. I would walk in and be freaked out that that's the woman I've got to, she's paying me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would freak me out.
I have an enormous compassion for people in general.
You do.
I think that people are people. Yeah. And that we all need something different. I know that there have been a lot of dates I've gone on that just want to talk.
Oh my gosh! Hang on.
Hang
on. I think that is a lot of it. I think the strip clubs are built on that.
Oh, sure.
I've always said that with my friends. Mm-hmm. It's not even the fact that it's
connecting with another
the woman coming
individual.
Up, the cute woman putting her hand on his shoulder. Hey, can I get you guys another?
They smell good. They look good.
It's just I think so much for men. It's about a loneliness or a need for some
We're
female.
Human beings.
Yeah.
We need that attention. We need that human connection.
Do you find that with your work then as well?
I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Men just want to talk a little bit.
A lot of times, yeah. A lot of times they just want to talk. I have clients that they pay me just to email them back and forth, or just to have Twitter.
You got to pay I got to pay you to.
You don't have to pay me. No, you don't have to pay me, but they do. They do it because they know that it takes a lot of time to answer their emails. So they'll send money along with the fact that we're doing this email exchange.
They like having a connection with you.
Because they like having that human connection.
Gotcha. Wow.
Yeah. I have guys that we text back and forth, because they want to be able to talk to somebody. They want to be able to communicate with somebody, and maybe they don't have that in their intimate relationship at home.
I have to feel you have the psychology of people down very well. You understand human nature.
You learn at a while, and I've been involved with the sex worker rights movement for a very long time now. Not as long as a lot of people have been, but I have an enormous amount of respect for the people who are able to just do this as a job all day long. I find my activism is what keeps me dedicated. You know.
Yeah, your honesty is so
Why would you have me on otherwise?
Well, that's true. That's a good point. But I think it's refreshing that you're not hiding. And you walk the walk. You know what I mean? It's a good thing.
I think we all have to walk the walk. You know, if we want things to get better, we have to start speaking up. We have to register to vote. We have to make sure that sex worker rights organizations like my own and like other organizations are funded. We've got to make sure that Up Orlando is able to continue to feed people and to continue to educate them and to continue to connect them to resources that they need. We need to make sure that trafficking victims have appropriate services that will help them find their bliss, because until they find their bliss, they're going to return to sex work.
Alex, you just an interesting woman. I love it.
Well, it's been a pleasure being here.
I love what you're doing, and keep fighting. It's going to take a while. I know that, but I think you've got a good cause.
Well, if you'd like to support our work, you can go to swopbehindbars.org. You can donate money. If you don't want to donate money and you want to have a little extra time on your hands, you can sign up to be a pen pal with an incarcerated sex worker. And you can mentor them and talk to them about some of the resources that are going to be available where and when they get out. If you don't want to do that and you just want to do a couple of clicks, you can pick on any one of our Amazon wish lists that we've created for sex workers who are behind bars, and you can purchase a book for them that will be sent into the prison, which will then be passed around to thousands upon thousands of women.
So you can become a pen pal to a sex worker.
You can.
Fascinating.
Yes.
And you communicate back and forth.
And you're creating that human connection. You're creating that outside influence that could help that person when they get out. I have one absolutely fabulous pen pal that he's just so awesome, and he's kind of famous, so I'm not going to out him on this right now.
No, nobody's listening.
Billy Procida. He holds pen pal parties in New York. He's having one this Tuesday night, and he has people come in. They do a bunch of kinky talk. He's a comic. He makes them laugh. Then they sit down. They write letters to these ladies who are suffering from absolutely no communication from the outside. They take pictures. They print them out. They put them in envelopes. They send them out. And it's got to make these people's day.
So it's got to make people that are in serving time feel like somebody cares out there.
It does make it. Well, and you know what? People do care, because it takes a lot of time to write a letter. It's not just something that you go, I'll take a lot of hours and write this letter. It doesn't happen like that. You develop a relationship with these people, and you're able to help them negotiate some of the things that maybe they didn't know. They don't get the news. Most of them in Florida, they don't have air conditioning at Lowell Women's Prison. It's a horrible.
No air conditioning.
No air conditioning. The Lowell Women's Prison, I don't know if there's some people, if you haven't talked to someone who has been locked up at the Lowell Women's Correctional Facility, you need to have that on your show. It was just a couple of months ago, some guards beat a woman until she was paralyzed from the neck down, and she was a mentally challenged individual.
Right.
This kind of abuse goes on all the time. Wow. Goes on all the time, and the prisons just need to go. Less than 10% of the people who are in prison really need to be in prison. Everyone else needs services and access to sober living and access to drugs that will help them stay sober if they need that kind of connection. They need access to education. They need to be able to get their identification documents. They need to be able to connect. They have to be able to connect.
Awesome. Alex, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate your time. All right, we're out of here.
No more Roach on Florida TV.